Friends, it is Walter Brown on the Magician's Hat. We are on page 59. We are in chapter 8. Chapter 8, the title is The Final Freeze. What's going to happen? What are they going to freeze? In the freezer. What are they going to put in the freezer? Where's it gone? Shouted Hannah, flying off the bottom stair and looking left and right. It, what is it? It is the flaming fire fiend. Where did the flaming fire fiend go? Where is it? It's in here, called Walter from the kitchen, relieved to have his sister on side. Hannah raced through the doorway to see the tiny fire fiend dancing madly on top of the stainless steel bread bin above its upside-down reflection. 6 Cents jumped up onto the kitchen counter beside the bread bin and arched her back, hissing in the monster's direction. Does this kitchen have a bread bin? No, this kitchen does not have a bread bin. But on the next page in our book, we have a bread bin right there where they keep the bread. The fire fiend fixed its glowing red eyes on her, but didn't budge from its vantage point. What is that thing? Gasped Hannah. It's from the Braithwaite twins' Planet Voss game. I'll explain later, said Walter breathlessly. You what? Hannah frowned deeply. This was clearly some kind of clever prank. She thought it was a joke. She thought it can't be real. She scratched the underside of her chin. Then it clicked. Walter's chemistry set. This was a failed experiment that had gotten out of hand. What's more, she was the butt of the joke. She folded her arms and leaned against the refrigerator, shaking her head. Very funny, Walter. You can see the flaming fire fiend there, and you can see 6 Cents looking at the flaming fire fiend on page 60. I'm not joking, said Walter, his eyes widening in panic as scorch marks began creeping up the wall. So he's burning the wall behind the fire fiend. The whole house could go up in flames at any minute. Time for magic, he breathed. But as he jerked his right hand forward, he found himself gripping thin air. His stomach lurched as he pictured the wand falling from his hands upstairs. Magic was out of the question. He didn't have his magic wand. He couldn't do magic. His magic wand was upstairs in his bedroom. Oh no! Walter glanced desperately around the kitchen, searching for ideas. He looked back in despair at Hannah. Then his eyes rested on the refrigerator. Behind her, this refrigerator right here. 6 Cents, the freezer. Let's try to get it into the freezer. Brilliant, shouted 6 Cents, her eyes still on the fire fiend. 6 Cents, what are you talking about? Said Hannah. Quick, Hannah, shouted Walter. Open the freezer door. I'll try to scare it in. At that moment, the fire fiend threw up its arms and let out a breathy cackle, then hurled itself from the bread bin over 6 Cents' head and onto the kitchen table, landing just a few centimeters from Hannah's homework. Get it off there, Walter! Hannah stared in horror as the fire fiend began breathing flames in the direction of her Viking project papers. So the fire was going to burn her homework, the homework that she's been working on for the whole book. You would not be very happy if the flaming fire fiend burned your homework. If your bonkers fireball experiment ruins my project, I'll never speak to you again. 6 Cents leapt across the table and positioned herself squarely on top of Hannah's homework, growling and arching her back. The wooden tabletop started to smoke and burn and turn black beneath the fire fiend's tiny dancing feet. So the table is already starting to burn. Open the freezer door, yelled Walter again. The pitch and frenzy in Walter's voice finally jerked Hannah into action, and she stepped forward and pulled open the freezer door. Quick, get your wand, shouted Sixth Sense. I'll hold it here. On it, Walter turned and raced out the door. You what? Walter, come back, called Hannah, still staring at the dancing fire creature. And the more she stared, the more she wondered whether perhaps it wasn't a joke after all. You can see the picture here of the flaming fire fiend in the kitchen table with Sixth Sense. Yeah. Ooh. Walter reappeared breathless, wand in hand, just as the fire fiend swiveled round and breathed a mammoth flame right across the room onto the window blind above the sink. The blind burst into flames. Hannah let out a shriek and dashed towards the kitchen sink, the water. But already the fire fiend was looking around for other targets. Sixth Sense continued to spit and scowl, trying to distract the fire fiend. Walter knew he had to act without her help this time, and he had to make this work. He breathed in deeply through his nose, immediately dismissing the tingle in his tummy. Focus, he whispered to himself, remembering what Grandpa Horace had said. Focus, he repeated. A quiet calm took hold of him as he reached deep inside, drawing on all his powers of concentration. And he has his magic wand up. He's ready to do magic. Then a familiar warm shiver ran down his spine as he raised his wand ceremoniously into the air. He felt confident, bold, strong. And now, with his gaze fixed on the tiny, raging monster, he conjured up a clear image of the fire fiend being sucked across the room and into the freezer, while the flames on the kitchen blind extinguished. He was just starting to cry, "Jeepers creepers," in a voice that didn't sound quite like his own, when the fire fiend jerked its head right and saw him in the doorway. Instantly, its flames dimmed to green and blue, and it launched itself into the air, where it paused, twisting, writhing, and cackling above the kitchen table. "Zabadoo! Zabadabadoo!" boomed Walter and swished his wand down through the air. The fire fiend went limp and let out a piercing scream. It then shot sideways across the room and in through the open freezer door. Hannah raced to the freezer and slammed the door shut. "Got it," she shouted. A muffled hissing and fizzing came from inside it. Then silence. Phew. Walter looked towards the kitchen window. The fire was out. "Awesome," he said breathlessly, then punched the air and offered a high five to his sister. Hannah started to raise her hand, but then changed her mind. Instead, she sat down at the table, locked her eyebrows into a deep V, and assumed her grown-up voice. "Okay, so what's going on, Walter? You'd better explain now. You're going to be in such trouble when Mom and Dad get back." Walter darted a sideways glance at Sixth Sense, looking for help. But she had her mind on other things. "Cripes," he said, following her gaze as she crouched on the floor, ears pricked forward. Water was streaming out from under the freezer door, right? Because they put the fire in the freezer, so all the ice cubes are melting. "Uh-oh," said Sixth Sense. She sat bolt upright, twitching her tail from side to side. "They're on their way. Sorry, Walter, got distracted." "Who?" said Walter. "Pardon," said Hannah. "Your parents," said Sixth Sense. "Correction. They're here." "His parents are home." Tires crunched across the gravel in the driveway, accompanied by the low rumble of a car engine. I have never seen the word tires spelled like that. That must be the British way they spell tires. Tires should be Tires. "The car's home. They're here. His parents are here." The water was now gushing across the floor and started to form a small lake on the far side of the room. Walter's cheeks turned numb as he looked all around at the flood, the scorched table and the walls, the blackened blinds. And as he pictured the devastation in his bedroom, he had to fix it all and fast, right? His parents don't want to come home to see this mess, burning water. They don't want to see it. He'd worry about Hannah later. There was no time to explain. He took a deep breath and focused deep inside once again, picturing the kitchen and his bedroom and the stair carpet exactly as it had been before, right? He wanted everything to be okay, everything to be perfect. Immediately, a warm shiver ran down his spine and he raised his wand ceremoniously into the air. The car doors slammed outside, but Walter stayed focused. Jeepers creepers, zabba-dabba-doo, he cried confidently in a voice that didn't quite sound like his own. What the? Hannah stared saucer-eyed at the now glowing, fizzing, and popping wand. A blinding flash filled the kitchen. Something seemed to shudder. Walter looked up. The scorch marks on the table, on the wall and the table were gone, and the blind hung intact at the kitchen window. He looked down. The kitchen floor was bone dry. It worked! He did magic. He cleaned everything up with his magic, cried Walter, casting his eyes around for approval. Even his hat and clothes were dry. Bravo, partner! All clear upstairs. 6 Cents appeared through the kitchen doorway. So his bedroom looked good too. Walter heard his parents' voices in the driveway. What? What's worked? Said Hannah, suddenly shaking her head and frowning. Hang on, she said, looking all around. When did you creep in here? Did I just fall asleep doing my homework? So Hannah does not remember anything. She doesn't remember about the fire fiend. She doesn't remember about the water. She doesn't remember about anything. He cleaned her brain. Walter clapped his hand to his mouth. Had he accidentally wiped his sister's memory when putting everything back to how it had been? Was that awesome or freaky? He couldn't decide. Either way, it solved one huge problem. Must have, he said. He paused, then pulled a goofy, cross-eyed face at her. Getting some beauty sleep before my birthday party, I bet. Hannah sighed and glanced at the ceiling, then crossed her eyes at him. They're all 3 years younger than me, Walter. Duh. Walter backed into the hallway, giving his sister a wide, silly grin. Then he turned and zipped upstairs just before the Kings turned into the front door. So Hannah doesn't remember anything that happened. And he lied to her and said, yeah, I think you were sleeping, right? And so getting ready for my party. So I'm going to stop there because that's all I asked you to read for tonight. And I will do another video for page 67. Thank you.